Hey everybody, it's Caleb, and I'm doing my ebook review or intro. And my book is Doing History Investigating with Children in Elementary and Middle School by Linda Livestick and Keith Barton. Now, I've read these portions of the book before, and I've read articles from the authors for other assignments. And they're good authors. I think they're very reliable. The book itself is done research, or it's well researched book. It's they themselves have done their research not only in the United States but in Northern Ireland and New Zealand. So it's a really well researched piece of work. And well, let's just get into it. Doing history, which uh, oh, doing history begins with a discussion about history as it relates to the past, present, and future. And it begins with four stances on history that everybody has. They're really just four stances on which somebody can look at history from, four viewpoints, and one of them is identification. Uh, and this is where you look at history and you identify with a part of it. So if I look at let's say my parents were immigrants from Eastern Europe, I would look at uh, any event of immigration from Europe, and I'd identify with that. Stuff like that. I would. There's another stance is moral response, where you look at an event like the Holocaust or slavery, and you have a strong moral response where you can say, "Oh, that's bad. That is the Holocaust should not have happened. That's how could we have let that happen? Let's move forward and decide not to do it." And another is analytic, where you take a as an unbiased approach to it as possible and see what happened for that event to occur. And exhibition is just showing how it's affected your life today, is really how it is. In a opposition to relating to it is seeing how it's affected you. And that's how those four stances out. And I feel that that very beginning, from the very beginning of the book, really emphasizes that history and the study of history is not like math or science, where you can take 2 plus 2 and get 4, or you can take certain elements and get salt. It's much more complex than that, because it's not a we don't know everything about history, and so a lot of it is up to interpretation, and even its conclusions, which are widely accepted, are even still up to interpretation by the individual, uh, such as the moral response. There could be individuals who see things like there could be individuals who see events that some might mark as horrible, and others who see events in history and strike them as good. So it's things like that that we really have to be careful for and look out for, or not be careful for, but we need to be aware of when teaching history, because when we look at history, a lot of times, a lot of us just remember, oh, my teacher told me a story about the Battle of Hastings, but we don't really get into things like, oh, the Battle of Hastings affects me today because it affects how I speak English or anything like that. So, or I don't know how I feel about the fact that a certain people group came in and changed how language works, or something like that, because that's what the Battle of Hastings did. It changed the way English worked. But we don't teach kids how to apply their interpretations properly, and that right there is the importance of history. And so this book really lays out from the very beginning, and throughout the whole book actually, that history that portion of history, more than just the events, or just as important as the events, is how we interpret them and our ability to interpret them. And so that's really the emphasis of the book. Uh, so let's see here. So I think one of my favorite quote, or a quote that I think really from the book, that's really brings it all home here on this point is that history is neither a neutral force or a complete worldview. It's always someone's history. I think that really does the best to summarize what we're trying to say here. And from the very beginning of the book, it says, this is what history is. So now we need to teach with the goal of making sure that they understand their place in history and how they can look at history that way as a conscious historian. And a lesson that I really liked from chapter 4 about this was teaching kids how to make a history of me. That was the name of the lesson, was the history of me. And this teaching strategy makes the student make a timeline of themselves and essays about their lifetimes and recordings talking about who they are, like events in their lifetime and stuff like that. And each student becoming a museum curator of a museum about their own life. And I really like this because it allows these kids to use identification, that identification stance of history, and identifying their place in history and who they are as people and how it relates to events in the past and in the present and how they can affect the future. And I think this lesson here, which it was pretty cool because the kids in the book, they were just really getting into it. It really got everyone interested because it is about themselves, and they could tell everybody about themselves, which who doesn't like doing that? But I think that, well, and that spirit of that, I think that it connects pretty well to English and how they can write a biography about themselves. Because those essays and stuff like that, when you get down to it, all that I'm asking them to do is create a physical biography about themselves that they get to walk everybody through. But I think that in English, you can teach them how to write a biography about themselves, which they all have to write essays anyways. So it does kind of tie into this, but I think you can teach them how to write biographies about themselves to help them identify with historical events, really, with their own history, to become self-conscious about their own, or self-aware rather, about their own history and who they are as people. And so that's what I think. All right, so thank you all for listening. Have a good rest of your day, night, whenever you're watching this. All right, bye.